women in the Gambia continue to face economic challenges amid the impact of the global pandemic. South Sudanese Central Bank has increased the country's weekly auction from $5 to $8 million. And European Union chose Ghana to be the manufacturing hub for coronavirus vaccines in Africa. These and more coming on the news desk. Do stay tuned. This is the news desk with me, Julenjai Suare. Many thanks for joining us, and now the news in detail. The inappropriate effects of the pandemic on women remain a challenge that will likely have a long-term consequences. The pandemic has adversely affected the economic gain of women across the world, more especially in the Gambia, as their source of income has deteriorated by the pandemic. And Sise has the rest of that story.
The continued backlash on human development by the coronavirus global pandemic is also emphasized on gender lines. Gender inequalities was exposed as women receive a large share of the extra childcare work, following the closure of schools in one aspect. A whole list including loss of jobs and market shares due to governing regulations to control the spread of COVID-19 did not leave women on the go. Fatimata Makalo, a vendor at the Serekunda market, explained the closure of businesses at the peak of the pandemic as a drastic setback on her income.
The pandemic has affected me a lot. Everything started at a time when we were asked to close our shops at 1 o'clock. Whether you make sales or not, you are forced to pack and leave. Selling is where I get my earnings to feed my family.
The scenario of helplessness on the side of women because of the COVID-19 pandemic is what gender activist Jama Jack referred to as a classic gender inequality in the Gambia.
There hasn't been equality in the Gambia. We can't even begin to talk about equity anyway in the Gambia from a gender perspective, from a class perspective, But then what COVID has done is just show us that this is actually real, and even worse, it has widened the gap.
She noted how the lockdown periods and closure of businesses impacted women who are reliant on market hours to provide for their families' food and every other basic need.
Because those who were already struggling to survive every day were the ones that were probably more deeply impacted by the lockdown measures or the public health regulations. Because if, for example, you look at market women who wake up every morning to go sell their produce to make money that they now use to take care of their families, and you tell them the market is opening from this time to that time, you're already restricting how much they're able to make in a day, and that affects how much income they're able to go home with and take care of their needs.
The Gambian National Gender Policy of 2010-2020 showed that disparities still exist between men and women in power sharing, participation and control over decision making, mainly due to traditional and cultural forces. A Commonwealth report in September 2020 recommended amendments of laws that discriminate against women to pave the way for equal rights in the West African nation. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am Desise.
In a bid to strengthen the South Sudanese pound sterling and, of course, stabilize the economy, the country's central bank has increased the amount of foreign currency it injects into the economy to $8 million, up from the previous $5 million every week. The country has made gains against the dollar as a result of the weekly auctioning of the dollar to commercial banks and forex exchange bureaus. But despite the progress, the prices of basic commodities remain high in markets across the country in recent weeks. Detail of that in this report.
The Bank of South Sudan says commercial banks in the country will receive $5 million and forex bureaus $3 million weekly. The bank says it hopes the hard currency it is providing will remove excess local currency in the market and reduce inflation.
Our attempt really to stabilize the exchange rate is indirectly should contribute to the stability of prices.
The local currency has recently gained strength against the US dollars. However, many Juba residents say they are not feeling its impact.
The dollar is now coming down, but there is no way we can have to see things at the same price down of last time. Because normally if you go to the market, now we just know that the dollar is now reaching the level where people now can get something good, but there is no way. If I don't know if I go to market, I can get this on the price of market. If I don't cooking oil, just the same price down of last time.
One civil society group in South Sudan's capital, Juba, is hailing the provision of the US dollars by the central bank, but it is urging the government to focus on maintaining lasting peace as a solution for the country's ailing economy.
We know that right now investors fear to come to this country because of the nature of the conflict and because of the environment. We need to improve this so that we see some of these industries coming. We see very serious investment in this country so that we are able to generate some kind of employment.
The Bank of South Sudan obtained $174.2 million in March from the International Monetary Fund. The bank says it is using part of that funding to try and stabilize prices in the market. Some of it will also be used to settle salary arrears for civil servants.
Mamset Njai, an investor, entrepreneur and engineer, has on Wednesday appeared before the Truth Commission to give his testimony on land transaction he was involved in with the Social Security and Housing Financial Corporation during Jammeh's era. He narrated his side of the story about his relationship with former President Yahya Jammeh that led to his arrest and detention. And ICC again has this story.
The former president was not only accused of arbitrary killings and detention, but also involved in bribes and forcefully procurement of land from ordinary citizens. One of his prominent victims was Mamset Njai, a local businessman in the Gambia. He was involved in a land transaction with Social Security, Housing and Financial Corporation that led to his encounter with the former president. The witness further explained his first encounter with Jammeh.
Obviously, land moko fa nekkal.
Yes, obviously he asked what is there for him.
And what did you understand him to mean by that?
Su waxe lol ne lan mo lana ko fa nekkal yow ci yow lol lum tekki.
Dafa describe ne dafa need about 300 plots.
That means that he needs about 300 plots. Ne manam dafa soxlo dem ci ñetti téméri pak fofu.
Yo xamne su footballers yi démé be am ndam.
That when the footballers came with a victory, there is something that he will give it to them.
Party militants.
And some party militants,
so that means the lolu da for the gain a man is 700 plots.
And that means that should come from my 700 plots.
967.
967. Suma juroom ñenti téméri plot ak lu tek.
Mamset Njai said during this period, neither his lawyer nor the retailer's lawyer were informed about the issue.
Because Social Security duñ ko mëna def dafa open too much. Everybody will know it.
Because the Social Security cannot do it because it will be very open and everybody will know it. Ñepp dañ ko doon di xam ni ko.
Nim ko gisé moy even if you have 600 plots.
Wow, is all this. Even you have 600 plots, bo ci aware am sa juroom benn téméri pak.
So jaay plots show suñ paré with the size and services.
If you sell those plots when we are done with the size and services,
minimum dinga am ben 300 million.
The minimum is $300 million.
That was the selling point.
The witness added that Jammeh wanted bribe before he could approve the project, and he had no choice but to give him 300 plots the former Gambian leader demanded. In the Gambia, an individual's right could be at risk due to lack of prosperity of authority to ensure that land is rightfully given to the owner. Reporting for iAfrica News, I am DCC.
The European Union has chosen Ghana to be the manufacturing hub for coronavirus vaccines in Africa after it has started producing its own local vaccines. Earlier this year, the Ghanaian President Nana Akufo-Addo said he was determined to see Ghana manufacture her own vaccine. Already, the government has selected 3 companies in Ghana that will work with the European partners in the production of the vaccine. More of that in this report.
The European Union says it chose Ghana as one of the manufacturing hubs of COVID-19 vaccines in Africa because the country has already initiated plans for local production. The government says 3 Ghanaian companies are working to produce the vaccines, and they have already set up their factories. The local manufacturers have yet to get approval to produce the shots, but the government says a team from the European Union and Ghana will soon be meeting to discuss how to implement the project. For now, Ghana is racing against time to inoculate at least 20 million out of its 30 million population against COVID-19 by the end of the year. The country has had to rely on the supply of AstraZeneca vaccines from the Democratic Republic of Congo, which were nearly expiring, to administer the second shots to people who had already taken the first jabs. This was after the supply of vaccines under the WHO-backed COVAX vaccine sharing initiative was delayed by a slump in production and supply from India. If successful, the government says the European Investment Bank may fund the production of COVID-19 vaccines in Ghana.
We will now take a short break. Still to come, it's more local and international news. Do stay tuned and don't go away.
Following the announcement by the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, of the dates for the general voter registration scheduled from the 29th of May to 11th July 2021, the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, reminds the public that voter registration is an integral part of the electoral process, as it is key to franchise as stated in Section 39 of the Constitution, and hence a civic right and a duty for all eligible Gambians. The NCCE therefore encourages every eligible citizen to fully participate in this crucial national exercise, as it is the basis for any credible and participatory election. The National Council for Civic Education informs the public that to register and acquire a voter's card in the upcoming general voter registration exercise, one has to prove your Gambian citizenship by producing one of the following documents as stated in Section 12 of the Elections Act: birth certificate, ID card, passport, or alcalo or district chief attestation. As the Gambia prepares for this very important national exercise, the National Council for Civic Education reminds the public to stay away from any altercation and refrain from the use of abusive language, provocative actions, intimidations, thugs and physical confrontation at all times, as these contravene the laws of the Gambia. The public is encouraged to follow due process to seek redress when the need arises during the period to ensure that peace and stability prevail throughout the process. Voter's card is your key to franchise. Register to vote and vote wisely. This message is brought to you by the National Council for Civic Education, NCCE, with support from the United Nations Development Programme.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, this is the news text on iAfrica TV, and I am Julde Yai. Thanks. Authorities in Ethiopia have decried the visa and economic restrictions imposed on the government officials and members of the security forces by the United States over authorities tied to the months-long conflict in northern Ethiopia. Thousands of people have died and at least 2 million others displaced since the conflict broke out in Ethiopia's northern region of Tigray last November. Detail of that in this report.
Ethiopian authorities continue to reflect on the U.S. State Department restrictions aimed at authorities and on finance and security-related issues. First, the Foreign Ministry here has condemned the move by the U.S. and said it would injure the long-held ties between the two countries. Now, the State Minister of Finance, Eyob Takaling, says nothing can stop Ethiopia from making an important breakthrough.
The U.S. is talking about some security restrictions, financial restrictions, except humanitarian aid. It's their money. So whatever they want to do, they're entitled to it. But would anything stop Ethiopia from transforming, from prospering, from making a breakthrough country in Africa? None.
Eyob said the United States' decision is saddening, but he hopes that things would eventually change for the better. He said Ethiopia can only strengthen itself when faced with such hurdles, and it will never change its stance.
The country is on the brink of meaningful transformation. We're moving forward. We'll make it. If there are some challenges on the way, as I said, I'm not aware of it, and I'm not even paying attention to it. Probably unfortunate to those who are here, but I'm not too much interested into it.
The United States maintains that Ethiopia has done little to address the humanitarian and human rights related issues in its northern territory. Addis Ababa, on the other hand, remains firm that it's doing its level best to accommodate its citizens, from the provision of protection for the vulnerable to bringing perpetrators to justice and delivering aid to the most affected.
The 14th edition of the GCCI Trade Fair International has been officially opened by the Gambian leader Adama Barrow at the Independence Stadium on Wednesday. This year's exhibition came following the cancellation of last year's event due to the global pandemic that proved the convergence of large groups. Sona Tunkara has more of that in this report.
The trade fair is the biggest exhibition for youth and women entrepreneurs to showcase their products and services to both regional and international markets. Organized by the Gambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the 2021 trade fair launched nearly 500 stalls with a large number of small and medium enterprises from across Africa and beyond. Youth and women participation is noticeably in the increase, which, according to Abdullah Baji, the Media and Communications Officer of the Youth Empowerment Project, is triggered by the supports given to starters in various businesses.
On the side of YEP, what we call the Youth Pavilion, together with the Techify partners. That's why we have it as the Youth Pavilion. So here, we got 40 stalls for different young people. All of these stalls are entirely paid for by the Techify project. We branded their stalls, and we also provided them with branding materials just to ensure that the business is recognized, and they also have the visibility materials that they need.
Small and medium enterprises constitute up to 60% of the labor force in the Gambia, with huge employment opportunities contributing 20% to the GDP. Mohamed Seng, Business Development Officer at the GCCI, said it is part of the Chamber's work to empower more women to advance their business.
Supporting women businesses is a top priority of the GCCI. We have a lot of programs we do that are centered on helping women to start businesses, grow them, and increase their investment opportunities.
With the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, many women and youth struggle to survive under the restrictive measures. Both medium and large businesses alike could not either offer goods and services to customers. President Barrow encouraged participants to make best use of the exhibition and promote their ventures.
With many female entrepreneurs and young persons linked to small and medium enterprises, forming a large part of the exhibitors, we hope that the 3 weeks ahead will bring the public together to discover what our local entrepreneurs and companies, as well as the regional entrepreneurs and the international companies, have to offer. I encourage both parties to make the most of the opportunities available for networking, matchmaking, and discovery, among others.
Many of the participants, including Binta Jamme and Aissatou Seka, are of the view that the trade fair presents opportunity in the recovery process from the impact of the pandemic.
My expectations are to get as much customers as possible and people to actually know the business more and people to see the amazing stuff I make. Yeah.
Right now, the turnout is somehow encouraging for now. You know, people normally show up when the trade fair is about to end, but thank God people are showing up.
The entire 2020, the world was seriously affected by the COVID-19 pandemic in one way or another, with the Gambia among the hardest hit economically. The GCCI International Trade Fairs has grown tremendously, with so many participants filling the leveled ground of the Gambia's International Stadium. According to the organizers, At least 450 stalls have been stationed with mostly youth and women entrepreneurs across the African region. For iAfrica News, Sohna Tunkara.
That story by Sohna Tunkara brings us to the end of the news text. But for more of these and others, join us in our subsequent news bulletins. Many thanks for the pleasure of your company, and do have a nice day. Bye-bye.